9 toppings to turn your store-bought ramen into a real Japanese ramen shop bowl. Konnichiwa, I'm Paqupel, your guide to Japanese flavors. Today we're making 9 authentic toppings, straight from a Japanese kitchen, so you can enjoy restaurant-quality ramen at home. In this video, we used instant ramen, the kind you find at Japanese supermarkets, both dried and fresh varieties. Feel free to use whatever ramen is available in your country. First up, pork chashu. Melt in your mouth pork belly slow braised in soy sauce, a classic topping that pairs beautifully with any style of ramen. First, pierce the pork belly all over with a fork. Cooking cold pork straight from the refrigerator causes sudden contraction from the temperature change. Taking it out 30 minutes before cooking results in a juicier texture. Score lightly to make rolling easier. Roll the pork belly tightly and tie securely with kitchen twine. Heat a small amount of neutral oil over medium-high heat and sear the pork belly on all sides until well browned. Searing the surface builds a layer of deep, aromatic flavor that carries through to the finished chashu. Wipe away any excess oil, then add enough water to fully submerge the meat. Add the blanching aromatics, green onion, garlic, and ginger, then bring to a boil. Blanching removes impurities and excess fat, resulting in a cleaner, clearer flavor. Once boiling, reduce to the lowest heat and maintain a bare simmer for about 90 minutes, turning the meat several times. Next, braise the chashu. Add the meat back to the pot along with the reserved blanching liquid, water, braising aromatics, soy sauce, sake, and sugar. Adding the seasoning after the meat is already tender prevents the salt from toughening the texture. Bring to a gentle boil. Once boiling, skim off any foam for a cleaner flavor, then place a drop lid directly on the surface. A drop lid ensures the braising liquid reaches every part of the meat evenly. Simmer gently over low heat for about 1 hour, turning the meat occasionally. Turn off the heat and allow the chashu to cool in the braising liquid. It absorbs more flavor as it cools. That's the pork chashu done. When serving on ramen, warm gently first to soften the fat to just the right texture. The flavor deepens further after resting overnight, and the braising liquid also works beautifully in fried rice and vegetable stir-fries. A classic topping that complements any style of ramen. Once you've mastered the basics, try adjusting the seasoning and tenderness to find your perfect chashu. Next up, Nitamago. Silky, soft-boiled eggs marinated in soy sauce, a classic topping that pairs especially well with any style of ramen. First, combine the soy sauce, water, mirin, sake, and sugar in a small saucepan. Bring to a brief boil. Once the alcohol has cooked off, turn off the heat and allow to cool completely. Placing eggs into warm marinade can cause the yolk to set further than intended. Always cool the marinade fully before adding the eggs. Next, using a pin or thumbtack, pierce a small hole in the rounded base of each egg. This helps prevent the shell from cracking during boiling and makes peeling easier. Bring a pot of water to a boil and gently lower the eggs straight from the refrigerator into the water. Starting with cold eggs helps achieve a more consistent finish. Cook over medium heat 6 minutes 30 seconds to 7 minutes for a flowing jammy yolk, or around 7 minutes 30 seconds for a slightly firmer finish. Transfer the eggs immediately to an ice bath. Rapid cooling stops residual heat from cooking the yolk further, locking in the ideal soft-boiled texture. Peel the eggs and submerge them in the cooled marinade. A Ziploc bag or any snug container works well. Using a small container and pressing plastic wrap directly onto the eggs allows a small amount of marinade to coat them evenly and efficiently. Refrigerate for half a day to 1 full day, turning occasionally for even coloring. That's the Nitamago done. For a clean cut, place a sheet of plastic wrap over the egg. This prevents the yolk from sticking to the knife. A single Nitamago is all it takes to make your ramen feel truly authentic. Next up, buttercorn. Sautéed corn with rich, savory butter, a classic topping that pairs especially well with miso ramen. First, melt butter in a frying pan over medium heat. Add the corn and sauté lightly until the butter coats each kernel and a slight gloss appears. Canned or frozen corn both work well. Season with salt and pepper. You can also add a small splash of soy sauce. Let it sizzle briefly against the hot pan before stirring it into the corn for a pleasant, toasty aroma. That's the buttercorn done. Ready in minutes and a perfect match for miso ramen. Adding an extra knob of butter on top is popular. Next up, seasoned Kikurage. Crunchy wood ear mushrooms seasoned with soy sauce and sesame, a classic topping that pairs especially well with tonkatsu ramen. First, rehydrate the dried Kikurage in water. Trim the tough ends and slice thinly. Heat sesame oil in a frying pan over medium heat and sauté the Kikurage. Patting them dry beforehand helps the seasoning absorb more effectively. Add the sugar, mirin, sake, and soy sauce. Continue sautéing until almost no liquid remains. Reducing the liquid until nearly gone concentrates the flavor and gives the Kikurage a well-seasoned finish. Finally, add the ground white sesame seeds and mix to combine. For a spicy variation, stir in a small amount of chili oil. That's the seasoned Kikurage done. Simple to make, yet it adds a satisfying crunch and a nutritional boost. Next up, spicy negi. Crisp, shredded long green onion tossed in sesame oil and chili, a topping that pairs especially well with shoyu and miso ramen. First, cut the long green onion into 1.5 to 2 inch lengths. Make a shallow lengthwise cut, open it flat, remove the inner core, and shred finely along the grain. Soak in cold water for 5 minutes. Soaking softens the sharpness of the negi and creates a crisper texture. Avoid soaking longer than 5 minutes as prolonged soaking dulls the aroma. Drain and pat dry. Next, combine the soy sauce, chicken bouillon powder, sesame oil, and chili oil in a bowl. Add ichimi togarashi, a traditional Japanese chili spice, if you prefer extra heat. Add the shredded negi and toss lightly to coat. Avoid overmixing. Handling too vigorously draws out moisture from the negi. Freshly made, the texture is at its crispest. After 10 minutes, the flavors are more fully integrated. Enjoy it however you like. That's the spicy negi done. Once you try spicy ramen, you won't be able to stop. Next up, miso-glazed ground pork. Rich, savory meat miso that melts into the broth as you eat, a topping that pairs especially well with miso ramen. First, add the sesame oil, garlic, and ginger to a frying pan. Then heat over medium heat and saute until fragrant. Add the ground pork and break it apart as it cooks. Once the pork is broken apart, avoid stirring too frequently. Letting it sit undisturbed for a moment develops a light sear. This adds a toasty, savory depth to the finished topping. Once the excess moisture has evaporated, add the miso, soy sauce, sugar, sake, and mirin. Seasoning slightly on the stronger side works well. The intensity will balance out once the meat miso meets the ramen broth. Continue to saute until the liquid reduces and the surface develops a glossy sheen. That's the miso-glazed ground pork done. Stir the meat miso into the broth gradually as you eat. The umami and richness will deepen with every bite. Next up, salt-seasoned chicken chashu. Tender chicken breast, poached gently until silky smooth, pairs especially well with shio ramen. Pat the chicken breast dry. Rub with the salt, sugar, and sake. Adding sugar helps the meat retain moisture during cooking, resulting in a noticeably more tender, silky texture. Rest for 15 to 30 minutes. Next, bring a generously filled pot of water to a boil, then reduce the heat until the surface is calm and no longer bubbling. Add the green onion tops, ginger, garlic, and chicken breast. Cook over low heat for 10 to 15 minutes. Keeping the temperature gentle and non-bubbling is key. A rolling boil will cause the chicken to tighten and dry out. Turn off the heat, place a lid on the pot, and leave for 20 to 30 minutes. Cooling in the poaching liquid allows the chicken to absorb extra moisture and flavor for a remarkably tender result. Once fully cooled, slice thinly against the grain for a noticeably softer texture. A small drizzle of sesame oil over the sliced chashu adds a pleasant aroma. That's the salt-seasoned chicken chashu done. Leaner than pork chashu, yet just as satisfying. Next up, soy-seasoned chicken chashu. Silky chicken breast poached gently and marinated in soy sauce. Pairs especially well with shoyu ramen. The steps up to poaching the chicken and finishing in residual heat are the same as the salt-seasoned chicken chashu. Please refer to that recipe for details. Now, make the marinade. Combine the soy sauce, poaching liquid, sake, and mirin to make the marinade. Once the chicken has lost most of its heat but is still slightly warm, transfer it to the marinade. The residual warmth helps the flavors absorb more readily. Refrigerate for half a day to overnight, turning the chicken over partway through for even flavor absorption. Finally, slice the chashu thinly. For an extra layer of flavor, strain the remaining marinade, reduce briefly over heat, and spoon over the sliced chashu just before serving. That's the soy-seasoned chicken chashu done. Light, protein-rich, and deeply satisfying with every bite. Last up, fluffy chicken meatballs. Soft, juicy chicken meatballs with miso and ginger pairs especially well with shio ramen. First, combine the ground chicken, green onion, ginger, miso, sake, potato starch, sesame oil, and egg in a bowl. The miso helps suppress any unwanted odor from the chicken while adding a layer of umami depth. Mix until the mixture comes together and feels sticky. This allows the proteins to bind, keeping the meatballs juicy and tender. Bring a pot of water to a boil, then drop spoonfuls of the meatball mixture directly into the water. Cook over medium-low heat for 4 to 5 minutes. Cooking at a gentle simmer rather than a rolling boil keeps the meatballs soft and fluffy. Remove the meatballs once they float to the surface and are cooked through. Save the poaching liquid. Using it in place of plain hot water when preparing your ramen adds chicken umami, noticeably deepening the overall flavor. That's the fluffy chicken meatballs done. Fluffy, satisfying, and a natural umami boost for the broth. Did any of these toppings appeal to you? With just a little extra effort, your homemade ramen can taste just like a real ramen shop. We hope you give them a try. See you again in our next video, and don't forget to subscribe for more Japanese recipes.